going to be serious.
Five.
Be typically off the wall. And this is the best attendance I can ever recall. Of course, I'm stuffed with my phone number and where I live. So, I think about my name, but as long as I can think back, great attendance. Everybody showed up. Is it because of refreshments or is it because of all the smiling faces? Or is it just
On campus.
new faces? So calling to order, and we have three new faces today. So first I say, welcome back. And it's a new year, but I know everybody's hitting their stride already here on campus. And now we're going to have our first meeting and get some business and get some updates. And in the meantime, because we have some new faces, I see Dr. William, but you're in the basement, right?
He's not speaking much.
I'm actually between my kitchen and my bathroom. It's a window that goes in between, but it looks like the basement,
I can
yes.
almost hear him. So
I said,
Make him talk.
that's okay. That's okay. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank
We're
you,
not-
thank you.
Your introduction to the council is going to be
Yes.
delayed until the next meeting. But welcome. I know you're the provost and head of academic affairs, so welcome. We've had the pleasure
you
to
very
meet
much.
in person briefly, and I look forward to seeing a lot of you. So welcome. But heal fast, recover fully.
Truly, get back here. I need help.
okay, okay. Thank you
You
very
need
much.
it.
Thank you. Okay, I'm coming. Okay, thank you.
See, and so we also have a new student representative. And I want to get this right. So it's Xavier.
My full name is Xaviana, almost like Xavier, but Anna at the end. I do go by Xavi, but whichever you would prefer to say.
I'll say Xavier. It's a lot easier to say. And I'm just going to ask if we're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves in a minute, and then maybe you'll hear a little bit more from you. But welcome.
Thank you.
And now we have a third member.
The black 9 goes on the red 10, Eli.
So there's two new people.
No, Renee.
Hey.
Renee, you're the alumni representative, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so welcome.
Thank you.
And you're going to be here every meeting, right? And first, we're going to introduce ourselves. I'm going to ask each of the new people present to tell us a little bit about yourselves. So I'm Eli Bosch. I'm the acting chair, and I love public education, and I love the university. And I'm just here to make things better for everybody. I am a Kingston lawyer native and firm supporter of public education and making the world better for other people. And go down, Neil.
Neil Batez, I'm the member of the College Council, and I'm also the new Paltz Town Supervisor.
Ron Long, a graduate of New Paltz 74, and been on the council for a while.
I'm Julie Noble. I'm a Binghamton alum, but I am the sustainability coordinator for the city of Kingston.
My name is Renee Padua-Backus. I'm a 1991 alumni of SUNY New Paltz. I am also the president for the Alumni Association, and I am a USDA urban farmer. I live in Maryland. I'm in New Paltz often.
Truly.
Thank you.
Erica Marks, Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations and Executive Director of the SUNY New Paltz Foundation.
Thank you.
I'm Reynolds Scott Childress. I go by Rennie. I'm the presiding officer of the Faculty Senate. That's why I'm here. I also teach in the history department.
I'm Stella Turk. Hi. I'm the interim vice president for enrollment management.
Michelle Halstead, Vice President for Administration.
Shelley Wright, Chief of Staff and Vice President for Communication.
Hannah Pacheco Dunn, Vice President for Human Resources, Diversity and Inclusion, and the College's Chief Diversity Officer.
Eleanor Venables, members for 26 years.
I'm Abe Ushatel, a member of the College Council and also a 2010 SUNY New Paltz alum. and also a county legislator representing Kingston to the Ulster County Legislature.
My name is Zavy. I'm the newly elected Student Association President.
Hi, my name is Rich Winters. I'm Deputy Chief of Staff and Director of Community and Government Relations, and I'm a 2008 alum.
Hey. And I'm Daryl.
Major.
History major. We forgive you. Daryl Wheeler, President.
And we have Bill on the monitor.
Yep.
Thank you. I can't believe the amount of people from Kingston here. This is like, wow. I forgot Erica's a resident. Rennie, Julie, Abe, here's truly. Used to be just one, but things have changed. So it's kind of cool. And well, with the county seat, New Paltz is really the center of Ulster County, as you all well know. So Xavier, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, so I guess I always start with a major, but I'm double majoring in psychology and Black studies. I'm a senior here at New Paltz. However, I didn't come until 2021 due to COVID. So I have seen the campus shift a lot from online learning to now just full being in person. I still work in town with the ARC Mid-Hudson as a direct support professional for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Love what I do. So I'm very passionate just about helping people, advocating for people, especially obviously students. Being Student Association President, I was the council chair last year, and seeing how effective we can be in problem solving and solutions. I think working with their President Wheeler last year, he definitely helped us figure out if you have a question, there's always an answer.
What's your hometown?
I'm from Brooklyn.
Hey, me too.
Partly.
Partly. There's always someone from Brooklyn in the room.
That's right.
Right.
Likelihood. And but you like it up here in the country, don't you?
I do. I feel very relaxed. Every time I go back home, I'm on edge. I'm like, this is why I left. But it does have a special place in my heart, but just, I'm out. I'm out forever. I won't be back.
Well, welcome. You're a voting member, and anytime you want to give us your information or benefit of your experience, please do so.
Thank you.
And Renee, a little bit more about you. I know you hail from your New Paltz
Right.
grad, so.
I'm a New Paltz grad. I'm a double major, clinical psychology and Black studies. I am officially retired. I have been for 14 years. I worked as a corporate compliance officer and in social services. I did HIV adoption of babies for the state of New York. And I did corporate compliance for New York Presbyterian. It was New York Hospital first, then they married Presbyterian. The interesting part is when food has always been something that I have been passionate about because I wasn't a good eater. The challenge is that we have a lot of food insecurity and people they act as if it doesn't exist. I have a challenge with that. So it was never a plan to be a USDA reformer, ever. I pulled weeds. Why? Because when I left work at the hospital, it was stressful. And that's how I got the stress out. The weeds, then go in the house. And I explained to people, once you touch earth, and I don't care if you like to garden or not, there's an exchange. And there's an exchange of wellness. So for me, when I came to New Paltz, I'm a tree hugger. So this is like perfect. And I tell people all the time, if you choose to go to school, it was said to me when I came here by a family member, you choose a school that knows your name, not your social security number. And that is why I chose New Paltz. So I continue to serve because of how I was served here. And that's it. That's the
You bleed orange and blue.
I know.
Saying.
All day.
And this is a great place to be connected to in many, many ways. It's a beautiful environment, and it was showcased today, as you know.
Right.
I know you're going to be crying when you see those leaves fall, but there'll be a springtime to follow. So welcome. Okay. Next, I think I have an agenda. President Wheeler, could you give us a report? First, I think minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody get the minutes, review them? Yeah, I have an agenda now. Any additions, corrections?
Move to adopt.
Second? All in favor? I don't, thank you. My report, what can I say about it? It's an interim report. Everything's fine with me. I made it here. Didn't get stopped on the thruway. Made my way to New Falls. I got to see these smiling faces. Gives me the opportunity to help in some small degree public education in the institution. So I'm always impressed when I come here in every single way. It's just a beautiful spot, a beautiful people, beautiful work. And it's a team and you have a wonderful leader. And the observation is that it's really important who your leader is. I don't know if I digressed last time to tell you about running into Chris Christie. This is like, we don't have the politics, anything familiar at all. But I ran into him last year, just in the winter, just before the Giants played their first playoff game. And just had a short conversation, and it dawned on me that the year before, the New York Giants had, like this year, but had a terrible, terrible season. And the next year, which is they were in the playoffs, and they probably had less talent. How did they get there? What was the difference? The difference was the coach. And when they had the first game of the season, they could have went for a 1-point tie, but he went for a 2-point conversion and won the game. And that was the coach's decision. And even had they not succeeded on the 2 points, it would have shown the team that he had confidence in them. And so the difference in leadership is really, 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 really important. And everybody's a little bit different, and but it's really important. When you say, well, it's all about the team, it is all about the team, but the leader is really, really important. And most things are pretty close. You know, whether you win, lose, sports, a lot of times things are competitive. What's the difference? Even 3-5% is a huge difference. It's often the difference between failure and success. And where does that come from? Comes from leadership. And we have a wonderful leader. So could you give us a report?
Sadie,
I mean
that was an introduction to you, right? No.
Yes. But it's something you will see in life, maybe, is that the whole leader, you kind of take it for granted, and sometimes you're thrust into it, and maybe not what you want to do, and you get placed there. But then how can you motivate the team? What can you do? First of all, you do your best, and you lead by example. And the leader, oftentimes, I say that in my situation, at the end of the day, I empty the trash, check the bathrooms, and then lock the door. And that's what the leader does. Not only get the benefit, but you're there and you're responsible for everything. That's why I've been failing.
Well, thank you for the introduction. That's a high bar to kind of come up to, but first college council meeting in this, my second year here. So I want to thank everybody who was part of onboarding me. It's been a phenomenal year. What I'd like to do today is highlight some things that you may have, if you got the faculty report earlier this week, I want to make sure I just highlight some things, but if you didn't get a chance to read it, it is available to you online. And then I'd like to add some elements that were not expounded on in the report, and then happy to answer questions. So we will have a budget report from Michelle as part of our meeting, so I won't spend a lot of time on the budget right now. We can answer questions on that afterwards. I do want to bring our attention to some phenomenal work that's being done in enrollment management. And I want to thank Stella Turk in her role and for submitting and guiding the application that led to our approval for a $935,000 one-time competitive fund to bring the ACE program, which is Accelerate, Complete, and Engage, to really move students across the educational experience to completion. That award will be expended over a 3-year period, and the goal is to hopefully make that part of our regular cadre of offerings, because if you increase and retain students, the revenue that you make more than offsets what you spend in terms of those early dollars. We also had work that's being done by Student Affairs that has been awarded behavioral health content that will amount to several $100,000 as well. I think some of the details we're still working on, but that is an important component. We have a couple of other funding opportunities that are in the pipeline, again, led by Stella and her team in terms of transfer pathways to funding, another $150,000+ dollars. So these resources, while they they support students and staff elements of what we do, provide a little bit of the operating costs. They don't really add, and you'll hear in our discussion, to our profitability in the short term. But without those kind of resources, we don't get to test out some of these critical engagement and retention efforts. So these are really important mechanisms for us. You know that from an earlier report, we had set an enrollment target of 1,395. We came in at 1,195. And we're looking at and examining critically how we set targets and how we actually bring the final number over, moving them from applicant to a seated student in the entering class. Now, with our student enrollment from transfer and from graduate programs and retention effort, our economic forecasts, again, you'll hear more about it, we met our expected dollars for the fall, but that doesn't translate totally into future dollars, okay? So we need to be very clear that it still has an impact now. One more award that I'd like to acknowledge is that the Agricultural Technology Workforce Readiness Summit that was held here late last month. We were awarded a $100,000+ award to do an agri-tech component. And I really want to comment on the team in the School of Science and Engineering who had less than a week to turn the application around. And when we first got the notice, it was like, well, don't bother because nobody's going to have time to do it. And back to risking and saying, no, let's put it before the team and let the team decide. But I was like, we can do this if we've got an idea. And sure enough, one person picked up on it, and within a week, the application was in. And a week later, we got a notice from the chancellor and the state senator's office. We need to host an event and you have to be there. And it was hosted on campus. So of course we had to be there, but we were one of the recipients. So that was a nice way to move forward. You are aware that we're doing the Science of Reading Fundamentals micro-credential. The Science of Reading is, it is an evidence-based approach to improving reading literacy in the K through 12 school environment. And without getting into a ton of the controversy around it, it's actually and unfortunately juxtaposed against a long-standing tradition that was born out of scholars from Columbia University. And so what we often get is a controversial mix of perspectives that are diametrically opposed in their political camps, but ultimately all affect the same people, the students who are lagging behind in literacy attainment. So the receipt of this award gives us $6.3 million to invest in both an endowed professorship and to expand our literacy program in our School of Education. Phenomenal opportunity for New Paltz, high recognition, high profile for us, and we'll keep you posted. We launched the program on September 11th. It is an online, fully asynchronistic program available to teachers P through 12. And our first cohort entered on the 11th of September, and our next cohort enters on the 19th of October, I believe. And we'll see how we go, but our goal is to reach 5,000 teachers in the first year with the micro-credential. And I've been involved in meetings with the New York State Education Commissioner, the New York City Chancellor, the New York State Chancellor, the BOCES superintendents, really pushing and promoting the centrality of SUNY New Paltz as a critical partner in this work.
Is that all online?
The program itself is online and asynchronistic. However, in the design, there are touch points where students, teachers in the program will have live sessions with leaders in the content area so that if you are grappling with a question on application, there are planned points of engagement that allow you to test those out. The program right now is focused on the 5,000 teachers in New York State, but with the endowment, we'll be able to expand this much further. But knowing our funder, we want to make sure that we deliver on the first deliverable, which are the 5,000 teachers in New York State.
It's an experimental program?
It's a well-established program. It's experimental and this gets into the controversy because it goes against some of the 40-year history of the way fundamentals of literacy were taught and have been embedded within the New York State system. But the data over the past several years have shown that New York State has fallen pretty far, double digits down the ladder in literacy for fourth grade testing. And that's using the prior model. The model of science of reading is also associated with what was called the Mississippi Miracle, where Mississippi State utilized this content and they moved from about number 40 something up to in the 20s or teens in terms of fourth grade reading literacy. And this evidence-based model is one that we don't propose. We're not saying it's the only tool, but it is another tool that teachers should have available to them. And SUNY New Paltz is the vehicle in the state that's offering it to 5,000 teachers immediately.
In what period of time?
1 year is for the 5,000 teachers. But again, it's asynchronistic and we're working with every school district in the state of New York. So we know there are 5,000 teachers out there, and by reaching the superintendent, the New York State Commissioner, the New York City Chancellor, the New York State Chancellor, we know we have access to them. It's a matter of pushing it forward and making sure that we reach those individuals. And Erica and her team were critically responsible in development for moving the application from concept to a signed agreement with the donor, which was wonderful. We had kickoff events. The student move-in day occurred. Was it the 25th? Something, I forget now. It was in August. I remember the move-in day. It seems like it was months ago. It actually is now. It's October. And it was a wonderful day and the family seemed to enjoy it. We did a new thing, which was called Sip and Cry, where we had an official departure for the parents, as opposed to them lingering on and holding on the doorknobs and cars. We actually gathered them, provided every family with 2 tickets for wine and said, we don't know where you're going after this, but you're leaving here. Bye. And so it was actually highly successful and quite enjoyable for the families as well. You could tell the seasoned families who've had more than one kid, they were the drive-by drop-offs. They were like, where's my ticket? I'll meet you over there at the wine event. We have upcoming events. We have the wonderful alumni reunion coming up on the 20th through the 22nd. We hope that many of you will be able to attend. Last weekend, we had parent weekends. We brought back a lot of parents who had dropped their students off. They were very laudatory of the experience. I think Xavier and student government have shared with us, there's a level of engagement and enthusiasm in the student body writ large, not just freshmen this year compared to even before COVID. And so that's a very exciting space in which we live. I was in Washington, D.C. for SUNY Days on the 19th through the 20th of September. That's where I got COVID, I'm pretty sure. But before I found out that I was sick, I was on Capitol Hill and represented along with all the other SUNY leaders. That event resulted in the liaison for SUNY's federal government meeting with us here the following Tuesday, which was an opportunity for them to hear directly from SUNY leadership. And I like to think that some of it was because of the kinds of questions that I posed and the fact that I wouldn't just back down on certain issues. And the big issue for me was the necessity of investing in the people. And you've heard me talk about this principle before, that while a lot of money is earmarked for student scholarships, student aid, and new products, if we're not supporting the faculty and staff who are here 20, 30, 40 years, it's not possible that you can get the best out of brick and mortar if the people aren't in their best. And we know how expensive it is to live in this region. We don't pay at a rate that many people can afford to live here. And then once we do, how are we developing the capacity of our faculty and staff to be at the top of their game? And while there may not be a climate for it in the national agenda right now, my belief is that we have to keep chipping away at that agenda to make the argument of how important it is to advance the technical skills of the men and women who work on the campus to serve our students. I have upcoming events with the Ulster Chamber of Commerce. I'll be a speaker in November. We have, what else? Last night, we started the new Ottaway lecturer. Her name is Amanda Sperber. She was introduced to the community, and on the 2nd of November, she'll be giving the Ottaway lecture. So if you're on campus on the 2nd, I look forward. She does work, a lot of work in East Africa, but she's an international journalist and really on the cutting edge of what it means to be a foreign international political I won't call her radical because she didn't use that word, but she goes well beyond the surface in terms of her investigation work to really shed light on how Western paradigms invade international space and kind of co-opt the way things are reported in other spheres. And so it was an interesting meeting. If you haven't seen the U.S. News and World Report acknowledgements, I think those were posted as well. Some of the places in which SUNY New Paltz has gained traction in terms of the ranking, those are very exciting. I know the team heard me earlier today and they're replacing outdated signage with new signage to really represent where we are in our contemporary space. And then finally, where I began, I really want to thank not only Zabi, but also her co-partner, who is the president of RHSA, the Residence Hall Student Advisory Group. The two presidents are doing a phenomenal job in leading the student government, and as are your vice presidents, your e-board members. And so I really want to say thank you. I will stop there, and I'm happy to, one final one I don't want to forget. Tomorrow, Barbara Allen will be on campus, and Barbara Allen is the 6th generation descendant of Sojourner Truth. So she'll be here on campus speaking with us about what it means to be a living descendant of Sojourner Truth. She'll host an open session from 10:30 to 11:30, and then from about 11:45 to almost 1, we'll be meeting with her in a smaller group to talk about what it means for her and how SUNY New Paltz can actually enliven the legacy of Sojourner Truth through our own campus resources and means. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
The ACE program, is it a support for students or I'm really not quite sure?
Stella, want to talk briefly about what we have designed in the ACE program?
So the ACE program is a replication program, a program that already exists in the SUNY system and has been highly successful. It actually is also a national program as well. It provides academic support, intentional advising, and dedicated advisor for these students, provides academic coaching, provides financial gap funding, textbook support, transportation support. So it's a wraparound advisement and hopefully to break down a lot of the barriers to successful completion.
How are those students chosen?
They have to be Pell eligible,
Okay.
non-EOP.
Okay. Does a grade point have to influence that also?
No, but the way we've designed the program, we're making it available to students that we're bringing in who are our academic consideration pilot program. So we have about 150 students that we will target for ACE and through an academic considerations program that we're going to pilot.
Is there dedicated staff that works with them or is this just?
We're hiring a director for the ACE program. That person's only responsibility is for the implementation and oversight of the program. And we're hiring an advisor dedicated to those students who will work collaboratively.
And how does that differ from what EOP does?
Very similar. It's a similar model.
Okay.
But they cannot be EOP eligible.
No, I when she said
They
that.
certainly can't be EOP students. So if they were to cap, maybe if EOP couldn't accept them, maybe, but they can't be in both.
Correct. It's general admit, correct. General admit, Pell eligible population.
Okay. Resources than EOP is able to provide.
EOP, I think, has more dedicated funding for students. So I think it is a higher level.
Okay.
And that's a conversation we know we could rely on Ron Law to advise us on since the birth of EOP in many regards and have intimate knowledge of it. But the idea here, and I saw affirmations and heads nodding, is that we understand that just accepting a student is only the beginning. That unless a student can persist and succeed, and persistent and success are not the same things, because you can float around earning credits that lead you nowhere. And that's what we want to make sure we avoid. And that's when you get into TAP trouble and then you start to incur debt that you can never pay off because you don't graduate. And we know that there's data that there are pockets of students that live in that space. And so the idea here is to demonstrate in the first 3 years why this is cost effective so that we make the argument to the university itself that it's worth the future investment in these staff persons.
And I guess the ultimate goal is to have them out of here in 4 years.
Yes. So we're supposed to demonstrate increased graduation rate, retention rates. So we have targets, benchmarks we're creating, and then targets that we want to achieve.
That's what I was gonna ask. What is the goal and the timeline?
So it's a 3-year timeline from pilot, so from inception to when our funding runs out, but we're hoping that we can build the program. And so we'll be starting with both transfer and first-year students. So the transfer students, we want them to finish in 2 years. Our first-year students, we want them to finish in 4 years. We do have rather high retention and graduation rates. We want these to be just as high, if not higher.
What's the cap in terms of the numbers here?
150 students.
I'm sorry.
We're going to target 100 first year and 50 transfer. I will also say that in terms of retention, we have been building out our Center for Student Success for subject tutoring, peer coaching, satellite services for students in the Athletic and Wellness Center. So we're preparing for not just these students, but all students who need support.
And I want to stop on that point because in discussions with the athletic director, in my meetings with the athletic director, then in meetings with Stella, it was very clear. We have a space in the athletic center where students gather because they use the athletic wellness center. And we're like, why not put services there? And and our two colleagues mobilize that. And it's like, put the services where students gather. They don't have to get up and move if that's where they're hanging out. It only makes sense. So we're just paying attention more in terms of what we're seeing, how our leaders are working is back to the team effort. My job is the coach or the leader is to just put them together and let them do their thing and get out of the way and not mess up. And that is I think the power of unleashing this power. It's just like, it turns into stuff we couldn't have even imagined. So I think it's very promising for the students in that regard.
Excited about it.
Thank you, Stella. And it goes along with what your agenda is that's to get funding from different sources than simply the state or tuition. And so, and Erica, so those programs do demonstrate that. And the long term, they actually bring in revenue because the students stay here and it just continues to generate and meets the goal, which is retention and graduation. So it really goes in harmony as well with, and it's hard because it's a pretty high bar here already. 30 plus years I've seen, just retention has gone like, wow.
Yes, it's high.
Hard to believe. And so you have a high bar and you're being very, inventive and aggressive in going over the bar, which is great. So thank you very much. Okay,
All right.
anything else? Any other items of new business? I know we're going to talk about MONEY now. So we can go to the budget, even though we have very little control over it. But, retaining students that haven't paid tuition is part of it.
All right, so just make sure this works. Bill, but I'm going to flip you up in the corner, Bill. So today we're going to talk about a couple of different things. There's a lot of information to go over, so I'm just going to give you some highlights. We're going to talk about the fiscal landscape, how we ended last year, where we are this year, and then we'll sum up with our plan for the future. So first up, if I can make this move. Come on. Go. Thank you. There we go. All right. The fiscal landscape. I am not an expert in federal or state fiscal matters, but from what my esteemed colleagues at System Administration provided to us last week, the federal landscape is that the Federal Reserve is forecasting that there's a high probability for a recession next spring, right around the time that the state budget is being put to bed. A graph that we were provided showed about a 70% chance for a recession. That trickles down to the state. The state's projection for revenue are down. A lot of that is in personal income tax revenues are less than expected, but also the stimulus funds that were provided during COVID-19 have run out and there are no more on the horizon. On the SUNY landscape, not particular to New Paltz, but for the entire state, the UUP contract, which is the largest collective bargaining unit in the state for SUNY campuses, has been settled. And our friends in HRDI right now are calculating all of the individual raises. But that has a significant impact on the finances of each SUNY campus. The state recently put out the budget call letter, which is where they asked SUNY put forward your best thoughts of what your next year's budget may look like. They have asked us to, all agencies, to expect a flat budget for next year. So they're asking SUNY not to put in any requests for additional funding. The transformational funding, while it's already guaranteed, the $935,000 that we just spoke about, that's guaranteed, even though it's a 3-year, we're getting that money. But new one-time funding is not likely. Some of the university-wide programs that exist right now, and there are a couple of dozen of them, specific to New Paltz, is EOP, childcare, students with disability, and we have a small amount for the Benjamin Center for Public Policy. It's not known at this point whether our programs will be eliminated or reduced, but some of the university-wide programming is being looked at very carefully by SUNY System Administration. For New Paltz, that UUP contract that I just referenced, the collective bargaining impacts for our campus for this fiscal year are $2.5 million. And our current reserve levels versus our anticipated structural deficit have put us in a precarious position, along with many other of our sister campuses. And they've resulted in additional oversight being required by the campus budget team, myself and Julie Walsh. We are meeting with system administration on a biweekly basis to develop a stabilization plan for the campus. So basically what this means is SUNY System has looked at our previous year finances, looked at our revenues and expenses versus what we've got cash on hand. And by their methods, they say the campus will be out of cash in all funds within 5 years. So that's how we got onto this list, and we'll talk about it more in a little bit. So that's the fiscal landscape. That's the overall situation that we're facing. How did we end up last year? And I know this is difficult to see in the back of the room. The slides will be provided. I've just got to move Bill a little bit.
I think you could close him down.
I don't want to close him. Whoops. Let's go back. Sorry.
You can't minimize it the third line over so he disappears.
Yeah, you can
just don't minimize him.
just don't close it.
Up at the top, the little.
Up at the top. Sorry. Let's follow it up.
Try the one.
So that's just gonna change them within the frame.
The little carrot on the left all the way.
Right there.
Oh,
this one is,
yeah.
Leave Bill where he is. I can see. I know what we've got going on here. Sorry, Bill. Sorry for the confusion. All right, so every year I present on the core instructional budget. For the new folks in the room, the core instructional budget is the budget that is supported by state taxpayer support, direct state taxpayer support, and tuition and fees. The fees being the college fee. There's a little bit of interest in there for good measure. It is not the only fund that the campus has. The campus has additional funding sources from broad-based fees, from summer tuition receipts, and our residence hall fund is also a large player in this game. So when we talk about all funds, what a student pays and what that actually translates into dollars, the campus actually receives somewhere in the amount of $120 million for all of our current students. But this budget, you'll see, represents just over half of that, half of our economy. I won't go into the complexities of the different funds at this point, but just know that we're talking about this particular fund today. So last year, we put out a budget where we expected revenues of almost $62 million, but we weighed that against anticipated expenditures of $72 million. So at the beginning of the year, if we did nothing and spent all of those dollars, we would have had to use $10.4 million worth of reserve. What actually happened was we exceeded our tuition target, which is great. We had higher enrollments than predicted the spring before. So we exceeded that target by 1.5 million. We also had a little extra state support in the amount of about 150,000 that was given to us at the end of the year to cover some university police collective bargaining retroactive raises, which was a nice surprise. So in the end, we collected $1.7 million more than our target at the beginning of the year. Looking at the expenditure side of the house, we saved, or we didn't spend, more than $3 million of that expected expenditure from the beginning of the year. Most of that was because we saw significant savings in our personnel. We have a number of vacant positions, more than 100 vacant positions out of 1,000 on campus, so a 10% vacancy rate. And those positions come with a dollar value, all funds, of $5 million. On this particular fund, it was almost $3 million of vacancy savings that I would say we enjoyed fiscally, but did not enjoy work-wise, because there's a lot of work that needs to get done. We did overspend a bit on utilities. We had an unanticipated increase in our water that's provided through the village. And of course, as you're all seeing at your home meters, electricity went up just a tad. And the gas prices are not a lot of fun either. So we overspent in utilities, $650,000. But underspent in our supplies, travel, contracts, equipment by about an equal amount. So in the end, we only had to use $5.7 million worth of our reserve in this fund. Here, and a little bit. There we go. Okay, so in the spring, I reported that the enacted budget saw SUNY receive $163 million from the state government. Some of that was in one-time funding and some was in ongoing funding. We already talked about the ACE and the transfer pathways that amounted to one-time funding of nearly $1 million. The successful proposal the proposal was issued in July, and we found out pretty quickly that we received those funds. So Stella's crew is actively, as you heard, working on spending that stuff as soon as we can. In ongoing funding, we received additional ongoing state taxpayer support that can go to the general need of this fund in the amount of $2.2 million. In addition, we have the ability to receive a multitude of smaller awards on an ongoing basis if proposals that we've recently submitted are approved. So we submitted proposals for graduate student fee mitigation, food insecurity, mental health, support for students with disabilities, and support for internship opportunities. Graduate student fee mitigation would go for to support the graduate students who actually are employed by the campus as GAs and TAs. The food insecurity support would go toward a coordinator for the program, some supplies, a refrigerator. It's not a lot of money, but we would certainly put it to good use to invigorate, support an already vigorous program that we have here for our food pantry. Mental health support, a lot of those dollars were requested in the form of personnel. We need people, we need resources, counselors for our students. We were able to hire a few counselors with stimulus funding. We're hopeful that this proposal is granted to keep those people on board to help our students through these challenging times. Supports for students with disabilities. Our students with disabilities numbers have increased dramatically over the years, and the supports needed for those students come not only in the form of technology and whatnot, but in the form of people as well. So we're hopeful that we can also employ some more folks in this building for our second floor to help out with that endeavor. And then support for internship opportunities is a really new field that we're looking at. A lot of the support, the proposal is going toward travel monies for our students to get them into internships that might be farther away, to give them gas money, help them get a bus to the internship opportunity. And it also does have a personnel component for a coordinator for this program. So we are anxiously awaiting, we hope in the next week or two, to find out if all of those funds were approved for the campus so that we can move forward. Would they be approved as a slate or individually? Individually is my understanding. So, and we did hear that there was some concern that that not just we, the global SUNY, we put forward proposals that had people attached to them. But as you can see by, the need for mental health counseling, you need people. So we are, as the business officers, push back on the senior leadership of SUNY's system to say these proposals are, these personnel are necessary to achieve the mission, the thoughts behind these dollars.
And then if approved, it would be annual, you wouldn't have to apply again?
No, it would be annual. We would likely be subject to reporting, as we always are, to make sure that we are meeting goals, but the thought is that these would be ongoing funds.
Do they help with the deficit, or are the programs expensive in and of themselves?
They help to the extent that we retain students. And as I said, we hired some mental health professionals with our stimulus funding. So I don't know that this campus would make the decision to not retain those counselors in the absence of this money, because we need that support. So yes, in my opinion, if we can retain the students with a lot of these positions, help them be successful with more support in the DRC, the Disability Resource Center, and help them with any food insecurity, sure.
So even though it looks like there's going to be a cold wind blowing, these programs are being rolled out. Are they the first ones to be eliminated if there's like across the board cuts?
That I couldn't speak to. I would think that campuses would be given some latitude to keep what we need and decide what we don't need. Of course, we need it all. But yeah, they haven't gone that far. They don't want to say, hey, here's a new program, but it's going to be the first on the.
Yeah, I mean, I already heard things are going to be flat, but inflation isn't going to be flat.
No.
So everything is going to cost more. That's right. With the same budget.
Yeah.
So maybe misunderstood, but they've asked the SUNY system to keep your budgets flat.
Yes,
Has the state indicated whether they will keep their funding flat?
yes.
Okay.
All agencies were asked to keep flat budgets for next year.
So the amount that they give is going to stay the same.
Yes.
So I want to,
Excuse me, Abe, did you have something?
No, it was actually answered.
so I do want to point out something from Michelle's earlier slide. The $2.5 million increase for UUP salaries, that comes to the university with so we got the one-time 2.2 million, which doesn't actually negate the 2.5, but it certainly helps. But that's only year one. This moves forward. This comes at an anticipated cost, that the contract that was negotiated this year will, over the first cycle, cost us $14 million. There are no additional funds coming to fill the $14 million gap. Those dollars are put on the backs of the campuses with no additional dollars.
How often is the contract negotiated?
Every 5 years. So what we did was build out a model to look at this, and where Michelle has tried to work magic and really massage the numbers, we could get within $1 million of a balanced budget, and the contract's gonna hit.
In the calculation that in 5 years, New Paltz will be out of money, did that calculation include the pay raise?
Yes, yes. So we'll talk more about the stabilization plan. I don't have the numbers associated with it because it is a work in progress. But we can certainly talk more about that at our next meeting. As Dr. Miller said, right now, what we have in the plan has us shrinking our ongoing deficit down to.
Burning right through it, right?
Yeah, burning right through it. But it depends on a lot of things that we'll get to in moments. So here we come. All right, so I'd like to compare the budget to budget last year to this year, so that you can see what our plans were, and incorporated in that basically are the raises and whatnot. But since we achieved and actually exceeded our tuition revenue target last year, we increased the target for this year. And as you'll see in the next slide, we're doing pretty well with our educated guess that we made in the spring. So we did increase our tuition revenue target by about $1.4 million. If you remember from the previous slide, we overachieved that target by 1.5 last year. So we're kind of staying in steady state with that we would be flat this year. In state support, those dollars from the previous slide roll up to $3.1 million in additional state taxpayer support if we get those proposals funded. So our revenue side looks like we will increase by $4.5 million. On the expenditure side, the personal service, as we said, the collective bargaining increases cost $2.5 million. But you'll note that the personal service number on this page does not increase $2.5 million. The reason for that is every year we take the budget, we put all the personnel in the spreadsheet, add them up, and then we say we're never going to have 100% fill rate on our personnel. Our previous target for vacancy savings was $800,000. As I said previously, we overshot that vacancy rate by $5 million for the whole campus and $3 million on this state operated fund. So we increased our vacancy target and took that personnel number down to what we believe it's actually going to be this year. We're still seeing we're having a difficult time filling positions and retaining talent. So we ratcheted that number down a little bit so it doesn't look, the impacts of the UP contract are a little bit hidden because of that budgetary move. We increased our temporary service just a little bit. The adjunct faculty are also are part of that collective bargaining increases. Utilities, we put them up to the rates that we actually saw last year. And you'll notice supplies, contracts, equipment, and other went up a little bit too. Most of that is factors from those proposals that we've submitted. There's that, the internships in particular. That's all monies that would go for travel and other items. So we project that our total expenditures will go up to about 2.7 million, and that we could potentially use 8.5 million of our precious reserves this year. And then just to compare, how are we doing so far? As President Wheeler said, again, we seem to have achieved our fall tuition and fees. There are still some calculations that need to be made for things like contract courses, overseas academic programs, and communications disorders, but we've put estimates in there. We believe that we will achieve that target. We might actually overachieve it by a little bit more than the 1% that's shown up there. At this point last year, we had achieved a 3% increase over our target for fall tuition and fees. The state support is right in line with what we received at this point last year, and this is as of September 30th, so we're 1 quarter through the year right now. On the expenditure side, we are at 22% of our personnel budgeted personnel dollars. Next time you see this, that will jump because the UUP raises will have paid out by then, I believe. And so we'll probably be more in line with the percentage of the year past. Temporary service, we're only at 12%. That happens this time of year because adjuncts are just getting on the payroll. That expenditure stream is a little wonky, and it has a bubble in the middle of the year, but the 2 ends of the year are light. Utilities, the number that you're seeing there is just a function of time. We haven't received the utility bills or hadn't paid them out by the time this report was done for the month of September. So that number will get larger as well. And then supplies, contracts, and travel are not a very linear expenditure for the campus, and you'll see those numbers fluctuate throughout the year. So bottom line is at 25% through the year, we are only 20% expended toward our anticipated annual expense. So now this is the important part, the stabilization plan. The president spoke on some of this data or some of this information in his report, but what are we doing to achieve stabilization on this campus? The first thing we need to do, and our president is a big data guy, is we need to dive into our data. We need to look to see how expensive it is to what's the cost to actually educate a student. How many more students do we need? And the strategic enrollment plan that Stella's crew has put together gives us a nice pathway to how many students we think we need to enroll in order to close that gap. We're obviously not going to enroll another 1,000 students in 1 year, but our goal is to ratchet up to more along the lines of about 8,000 headcount, or I think it's, but I think it's like 6,700 FTE students to get back to a stabilized budget.
Is there any thought of increasing tuition?
Unfortunately, the tuition rate increase is not under our control. It is under the Board of Trustees' control. Tuition rates outside, well, I should qualify. Undergraduate resident tuition rates have not increased in the past 3, maybe 4 years. There were marginal increases on the graduate and non-resident side this year, but very, very small increases. And most of our students are undergraduate resident students. So tuition and fees are not under our control, but we do, you know, it's hard for us to advocate for them. We don't want to see our students pay more. We need more state support, and we need more students. Yeah.
So I noticed there's a maybe $1 to $1.5 million drop between the fall and spring tuition. And is that just because they're not transferring in the middle of the year, or is there a way to increase transfers in the middle of the year? I'm just curious.
Let my friend Stella take this.
We do have students who graduate, and that's one of the reasons why the number drops. And we have been working very hard to increase our transfer numbers that have remained flat in the spring semester. But it is a goal to increase transfers. That's one of the reasons why we're developing more intentional transfer paths.
Yes.
I just want to ask a question as you're going through this. Is this stabilization, are these things that you're covering here something that's prescribed by the state, or did you come up with this plan?
Both and, I think that SUNY has asked us to look at our enrollments. Obviously, enrollment is trending downward was trending downward in most of the state operated campuses. It is up just a smidge this year. But they've asked us to really hone in on how to get more students in the pipeline as we see the number of college age graduates from high school declining over the past few years and into the next decade-ish. Yes.
They're saying that the likelihood of a recession is pretty high in the spring. Did they say if they think fewer students will go to college total, or will more of them be more likely to go to an in-state SUNY versus, liberal arts out of state? Oh, they have no ideas. I'm just curious.
Yeah, our hope is that they decide to stay in state. I mean, the consumer behavior has changed so much throughout the pandemic that it's really hard to anticipate what's going to happen on the national level. But as we endeavor to, and I don't want to speak for Shelley's area, but one of the things that we are looking at is promoting why it's important to go to college. Is a college education worth it? And we have to find that, hey, this is why New Paltz is worth it.
Well, you live a bunch longer. There's just not.
Yes, you do.
Yesterday.
You do. That's right.
Well, there are a couple things, and Stella, maybe this will tee you up for that. One, when we look at our pipeline from last year, applicants to students in seat, I indicated that we missed by 200. We actually admitted 9,000 students, and the number of applications was over 14,000, 16,000 applicants to SUNY New Paltz. We missed by 200, even though we had 4,000 applicants. Your face is telling the story. There's something happening between acceptance and butts and seats.
You use the term melt, right?
You got it, and we're missing. And we've actually gone back and looked the year before in iPads, which is the national data set. We can see that students who we accepted who didn't come to us, we can see where they went and that a year later, they're persisting somewhere else. So when we ask the question, is it that students aren't going to college? If we just look at the people we accepted a year ago who went somewhere else, they're doing okay somewhere else. We have to ask ourselves why they didn't come here. That becomes a very campus-based, and this is why investments in enrollment management and admissions are crucial. Massaging the pipeline and treating student applicants and their families with the highest degree of engagement increases the likelihood of a person applying and actually coming. And had we been able to just work the pool that we had, we might have been able to get we already got 1,100. Another 300 students would have put us over and above. And 300 is not a big number when you're talking 4,000. That's how we have to look at these programs and understand the data, and why I'm so insistent that the team is examining critically the trend and the data patterns. Because again, with 16,000 applicants, knowing that they've gone to many different schools, they have lots of choices. Some people weren't even intending to go here, but they just apply. So take those students out. We have a pool of people who express interest in us who didn't sit with us. We need to understand that component critically.
Yes, so that the sentiment and spirit here is coming up. which is probably part of it, in the welcoming culture and programs that we have, but it's promoting.
We have to make that infectious and contagious. We really do.
Sorry.
Could you say you're accepted, but if you decide not to come and you want to transfer next year, you can just transfer back?
The rules are, yeah, we can do that.
Oh, yes, and rules have changed quite a bit in admissions. One of the things that changed in the landscape of admissions, now other schools can continue to poach your student. So I'm sure you've heard that. There used to be rules against that, and now they continue throughout the year. So we know the stakes are higher. We know that we've been working very actively on our new student onboarding. We started this a year ago, looking at our communications, our organization, the programming that we offer the students when they are coming for orientation, the programming that continues once they get here. So we want to keep those students. We want them to stay happy, but we also know that we have to look at this from multiple angles. So our yield events have become much more robust. The campus community is much more involved in those yield events than ever before. We've hired a coordinator for those special kinds of programs for both our accepted students and our prospective students. We're also, in terms of marketing, we're looking at, we're about to launch a new program called Niche. Niche is I don't know if you've done college searches, but now students all enter the social program where they are raising their hand for particular kinds of colleges, as opposed to looking at the SAT or ACT, where students have to fill out forms and, the College Board lets us know who's interested. Well, students aren't taking SATs anymore. It's become optional. So those resources to our admissions officers, they're drying up. So we have to really meet the students where they are. So looking at the marketing, the students that are choosing even if they're not raising their hand for New Paltz, if they're picking a similar school. I'll give you an interesting example. We had a student who I met this weekend at the parent weekend, students from Tennessee. And I said, you met them too? I said, how did you pick New Paltz? Were we advertising down there? Did a guidance counselor tell you? And she said, no, we drove through the area. We drove through we drove through the area when I was a kid. I remembered this. I knew this is where I wanted to come to school. So I said, well, you can have the name of your guidance counselor. I really would like to find some marketing materials there. But I think that there are students, I think we have to do things a little bit differently than we've done in the past. The fact that we landed on in similar yield as we have in past years says to me that we're successful, but we're not breaking that barrier. There's some barrier here. So we have to think differently about why, maybe some of the students we rejected, maybe we shouldn't have rejected those.
Yep.
Especially if they're successful at other schools. Let's look at those students, see what supports we can put in place, and think a little bit differently. We're doing free application week again. This is a SUNY initiative, not a New Paltz one. So we will be engaged in free application week again from starting on October 16th. That will boost the number of applications. So we have an opportunity once again to make the case to students that New Paltz is the best place to be.
Did I hear you? So you monitor rejected students and how they do?
We looked to see, well, there's a survey of decliners, which I haven't seen this year, but we took a look at students who we rejected.
That's what I mean.
Where did they go?
Yeah.
And we looked for 2 years, the 4 years they went to, the 2 years they went to, we looked at their GPAs. Maybe those students would have been successful at New Paltz.
Did we poach?
Do we poach? I don't know if we actively poach.
Not as much as we can.
Yeah.
I think coaching is, I can speak to why.
Private, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. As a student, I can speak to a big reason why students come to New Paltz, and it is because of the vast amount of programs. So when I hear you speak about ACE program and just how program-based we are, it is a big reason why students come. The amount of majors we offer, our private school competitors don't offer nearly half of them. And it's a big reason why students come here because they have the space to say, I came in as a biology major, but I switched to Black Studies. Even that program is a huge reason why students are attracted. So I think the push for more programs and just expanding what we offer is always, me personally, I will always push for that because students, they simply can't get these programs anywhere else.
Sadie, you're right, because they look at us, they say, you're an intimate school, not huge like Binghamton, yet you have a breadth of programs. And I think that really does attract students. I will also say there is another program that we're putting out this summer. It's a Multicultural Honors Institute. It'll be a week-long program for 20 to 30 students, rising seniors. And those students have to be recommended by a guidance counselor. They need to have a certain GPA, which would be an admitting GPA for New Paltz. We plan to offer those students admission. So if they come to the program, they stay for a week, they're going to have intentional programming. And those students, we plan to offer them admission. So we're looking at this from multiple angles.
I want to mention two things. So I want to ask about something, but I also want to talk about something Xavier just brought up for me. So I'll mention that first, the attractiveness of the university being related to the variety of programs. I wonder if I think about like the analogy I think of is like a restaurant that has a very large menu and that's very attractive. I've also seen a lot of restaurants go out of business because they have too large of a menu.
Yep.
And I wonder to the extent that the variety of programs we're offering might be affected by the vacancies that we have with the faculty and continuing to be able to provide the variety of programs. If that's really what's drawing people here, like that really calls out to me as like a pink flag, the vacancies. And especially when we kind of look at it with like a semi-attractive lens, because it's helped us with savings. If that's like a leading indicator that we might not be able to support the variety that is bringing the students here, that could be something concerning.
So let me, since Bill can't speak, let me just, because that sits in his area. Couple of things. When we talk about, and Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, when we talk about vacancies, the majority of those vacancies are not in the faculty ranks.
They are.
They are not in the faculty ranks. Not that we don't have vacancies, and so between full-time and adjunct, we have the classes covered. What we don't have is a comprehensive data system that can tell us vacancies in seats and classes. And what I mean is you may have an intro class that has 60 students in it, but you may have an upper division class that has 7 students in it. So the seat utilization at the cost per faculty spread across several majors. So maybe you've got a lot, to your point, you've got a lot of breadth, but you may not have a lot of uptake, but it still costs you the same amount of money to run a class. We have to do that analysis as well, to your very point, to help us to answer the question, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. When do you run sections of classes? How do you help people in certain majors understand the pathway through so that you can still offer it, but offer it at a way that doesn't cause your menu to be your demise?
Right. Well, and I think you mentioned it earlier, examining the cost of educating a student. So a lot of the state aid items, I'm really happy to see that a lot of them are ongoing funding, with the exception of the ACE and the transfer program. Something that I've seen a lot when you get the opportunity to have new programs, like you get new funding, but the new funding also comes with new programs that you're providing. And in a way that increases the cost of educating a student.
That's right.
Right. So if we're watching that metric increase, like it's exciting to see the additional funding, but it's not like it's going to general operating, it's going to the programs that it comes in.
But I think the fact that it's helping retain students is important. I think that the contrast or the way to look at it is, do we do it the way we're doing it, or do we do it like West Virginia is doing it? And
Want to be West Virginia.
exactly. And so anyone who has not been reading about this, some of the universities there, they're saying, you know what, we're just going to eliminate liberal arts. And that's how we're going to save money. And that's how we're going to address this student shortage. I doubt that's going to be successful, but I'm not an expert.
but.
Look good numbers, money-wise, for a little while.
Well, the other thing that they also did when you scratch the surface, and again, I can't get into what decisions and how West Virginia got to where they were totally, but some of those universities invested heavily 15 years ago in brick and mortar. That brick and mortar costs you a lot when the people haven't been invested in. And making sure that the system's in place, because bricks and mortar won't make a student feel welcome. It will catch their attention on day one, but 15 years from now, depreciation and upkeep, plus increases in salaries and other decline will be difficult for you to handle on a very complex menu.
Well, also, I mean, to your point, that our operating budget and our brick and mortar budget are two separate pots and they can't be commingled. Whereas a lot of the other universities like West Virginia you're hearing about, it's one budget, and so they make decisions out of that same budget. Yeah.
Sometimes things work good for 5 years.
And then they don't, that's right.
The institution has an infinite horizon, and so the investment.
They built climbing walls, they built fancy gyms, water parks. There are places with water parks.
Yeah, and I want to make sure we finish the reports, but what you're doing right now is what I want College Council to do. I want you to be a sounding board to me. I want you to be able to think critically between meetings about these kinds of issues, to bring thoughts back, to keep an eye on this beloved institution and this resource to the county. Because we saw what has happened in Pottsdale, and we mentioned West Virginia, and we're nowhere near this cliff yet. But should this institution go down, what is the implication for Ulster County? It would be devastating.
It's my, guys and most of them don't really know, but I just say it's the engine. And, and I just have this, are we going to get lucky? You just never know. Just in generally providing great education, culturally, intellectually, workforce, et cetera. But then you just don't know. There could be just some graduate here could change the world.
That's right.
And who do you know when it's going to be? Nobody has a clue. All I know is you want to stay in the game, have a really good institution, educate people for their own value, and then just it unfolds. And predicting things in the future is impossible. Nobody can do it. But what you can do is do it here and now, do the right things, provide really quality education. It's its own reward. It's not easy, it's hard, but it's an investment. And you just do it. And who knows, the economy, recession, predicting things. Sometimes people can't get a job. What do? They go to college. Okay, but do they do that? I don't really know, but all I know, it's not going to be like you think. You can game it as much as you can. That is important, but it's just looking through the rearview mirror, and nobody can really see out there. And that what you can see is what you're doing now, do quality. But it's really interesting. And I have my own views on New Paltz. To get back on point, this is the spot, Hudson Valley, period. It just like Ryan, my law partner's son, went to Air Force Academy, jet pilot, Marine, et cetera. 2 masters from Stanford's, living out in San Francisco, came back here last week. Really hits him how beautiful this place is. Really, it's like, wow. But so, we really have something here. We should really appreciate it. And then the quality of the education you get here, the spirit, et cetera, et cetera. So to get, Daryl, back to your point, is talk it up. It's real. It may not be immediate, but over time, this is where we're at.
Following up on the question that Abe raised, I'm sure that in your stabilization plan, you have some metric or some kind of device of determining retirement or loss of staff over a year, or some kind of yearly statistic where you may. So while it's contributing to the vacancies, but can you kind of do a projection for that for a year? I mean, I'm sure each year is different. Also, I'm assuming that some of the faculty here is aging, and that may have an impact also on being able to replace them, particularly if you're having a difficulty trying to replace some of them now.
I'll let Tahina speak to this year. She's been having a lot of fun in her division.
So, I mean, as an industry, education is no different than a lot of places that have seen the market shift in terms of who's returning back to work and the pipelines that are feeding workforce in different areas. We have access to all sorts of information in terms of anticipated retirement rates across the state, across SUNY, and we can definitely develop that profile for the college. It's a pretty basic formula of age plus, a minimum of 10 years of service, and then you can sort of see who's falling in what is a typical retirement age. I think one of the pieces that we're finding, however, is number one, is that there's no more typical retirement age. Some of it has to do with market fallouts of people's investments. I mean, if you're in a retirement system that is a pension, which is almost gone completely by the wayside across the country, then those people are more likely to retire, particularly because their pension is sound, fixed, and they know exactly what they're going to get. And in fact, working past a certain age, they actually lose money in the long term of what they take home in their retirement years. So part of it is that we don't have a typical retirement age. Part of it is that we do still have a mixture of people who are pension versus investment made retirement funding. And we have a lot of people returning to work. So we have people who may have retired 5 years or over the pandemic because the circumstances were right, but they're coming back to work. I mean, I
know about those people.
Yeah, and I ran into an adjunct who, came in with a stroller, and I make no assessments on age or anything, but she's talking to the person at our front desk, and she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I just would need to check on my granddaughter," and she's coming back to work as an adjunct. Right. And so we're hearing those types of stories. But we do have an aging workforce. Baby boomers, are and will continue to retire. We also have a changing demographic of what employees actually want to do when they work. Right. So we have an entire group of people coming into the labor market who are expecting work to be different. It's not 9 to 5. They're looking for places that are socially conscious. They're looking for places that will allow work-life balance, that will prioritize their wellness and their development and their growth as people. And that's investment in people that costs any organization money. And we have to think about how we invest in that to keep them. The good thing is that we have a great reputation, right? People who come here enjoy our students. They're proud to teach them. They're proud to be part of what we're providing as a mission. And I think that that plus investment in folks so that they feel cared for in the life cycle of their work here is what'll help us keep people longer and not have the cost of turnover.
Yes.
I just want to add that, building off of what Tahina said, that word of mouth is more powerful than any marketing we can do. And it's marketing that we will continue to do marketing, but that is the most powerful thing. It's what people say when they go home, what they
Hear
say.
Renee's story, and I think
I
three
know.
of us were
I was
like, can we record
Can we
her?
record?
Right? That's your story.
Your testimonial.
Your testimonial
Your
about
experience.
this place and why it was home to you and how it led you to your path. Those are the stories that make people go, oh, I'll take a look.
That we like to tell.
I think that, funny. I think that I'm sitting and I listen and I'm looking at that plan. And I'm looking at somebody that's here now. And I think the exchange of engagement, like you said, the recipe, for me, it's a recipe, right? This whole thing is a recipe. And either your recipe works or it doesn't. There's no middle of the road. Either the cake is good or it's garbage, right? And I think what we have to do is we really have to peel back the layers and be honest. When you hit just what I was thinking, and I didn't say it. Because when I go in a restaurant and there's too many things on the menu, I leave. And it's not out of, I don't want to eat here, or I don't think it's a value. It's going to take me a minute to sit down and read everything that's here and see how it mixes and it matches with my dietary issues, my restraints, my blah, blah, blah. So we really need to look at, of what we have, what has worked. How many students do we have in a particular program? What do the graduation rates look in those particular programs? And not the graduation rate last year. Let's do a 5-year scan. And I'm a data person too, because at the hospital, that's what I did. right? To look at what works, who we want to come here. Because the platform has changed. The landscape is different. I walk around the campus and when people try to pass me, I said, we didn't do that when I went here. Hello, good afternoon, good day. And mind you, it might catch someone off guard, but if you never do that, the person that goes here now, they talk about our history. Oh, you went here back in the day. You don't understand unless somebody says something to you. So being part of the old guard, right, only helps the new guard. Because they're gonna come here and they're head down, you know, earphones in, mind my business. And I'm like, excuse me, I'm gonna mess up your whole day because I'm gonna walk in front of you and you're gonna bump me. And now that you bump me, think about a school. The engagement is, we have to talk, excuse me. And now what does that look like for us? What are we sitting down doing that for a student, for a parent, for Ulster County, what does it look like?
Who's out there doing it regularly?
All I know is it's not the same.
It's not. It's not. And I think we have to be willing to accept that it's not the same. And, you know, I'm talking 34 years ago, came here when I was 17, and it's different. So accept what the difference is and how can I help to make that number different? I'm looking at it from, okay, how many students, and in terms of recruitment, I don't know who does it here, if that person's in the room, but as it relates to, this is an education school. We have a lot of alumni that are in very high positions that are educators, right? That are the next, they have done consortiums and have council groups with the president. Barack Obama, it started with him. So you're not talking about people that don't have access and don't have bandwidth.
Yep.
They have it. They're teaching and training trainers and training directors and teachers. So getting them to come here, how often have we in the past, I'm dating myself, in the past, we went to people to talk to them. So we already know what value we're getting in the student. We could probably help on the financial side, however we craft that, whatever, right? I said, but we know the type of student we're gonna get because we want you to graduate. The objective is not for you to come here, hang out in the sub and just eat food and, you know, we want that piece of paper because then it gives us the value to say, how are we as an institution? Look, in 1991, my graduating class was like 600 and something people. Now you have a graduating class where you got to do it over a couple of days. You know, that says a lot. So, but now the thing is, of those people, how many of those people are sending their children? How many of those people are coming back? I'm part of the alumni council. How many of them are engaged? My thing is, it's not just about giving money. Like I said to someone not too long ago, time, talent, and treasure, what you got? I think I said to you earlier, time, talent, and treasure, what you got? Because that number that I just saw with money, it's one thing to ask somebody for money. I'm going to ask you, what am I getting for my money? I'll give you money. What am I getting for it? You know, we're in a climate that, granted, recession, 5 years, New Paltz can't go away. So now that's a message for me. Listen, I need some money. I need your pocketbook. You need a tax write-off. You got a business. How can we match? Does New Paltz match? You know, I don't know the answers to those questions.
If you're in New York State, we got some answers for you.
I'm not in New York, but my mother lives here.
See?
We can work that out. So, you know, the reason I sat and I'm listening, and there's some shifts that I don't see, right? And I have to now take all of what we said, and I'm big on, I don't like to print, but I double side, and then I study. And I use my little blue pen, because I don't like red. So you have to be able to digest this in a different way. Because it's great to come to a meeting, but if the meeting doesn't result in a next step definitive plan, then we have wasted a lot of energy and time. So I'm sorry it took so long.
Yeah, so I beg to differ. I don't think it's a waste of time because if you don't have dialogue, you don't have ideas.
Absolutely.
And so you always, and they're not always good ideas, but even if they're not good ideas, they generate good ideas.
They're out there.
And so that's this yin and yang or gallion, whatever you want to go. And so I know we got to move along, but I just say, you just got to throw that stardust, which is New Paltz out there. And other people want to get some of that stardust. And, you know, because it's a winner and it's a great institution. So always putting it on that trajectory and keeping on the trajectory has value in recruitment and has value right to the marrow.
I agree.
Ruby.
Okay, so we need money, so go back.
Yeah, so we
I know
we
it.
don't have much else here, but no, I just.
And there's a plan.
Yep.
Plan
Best
to weather the storm.
discussion ever in my 10 years in this seat. So thank you. So as you were just saying, other revenue streams. So when a person gives money to the campus, they give it to Erica's shop. What can we do with that money? Scholarships is usually the number one thing that helps us get those students in the door. So that builds my budget. It doesn't translate directly, but it does, not my budget, it's our budget. But getting those students, retaining those students with those core dollars from other revenue sources like the development opportunities that we have. There's also our sponsored programs, getting grants. Getting grants may not, again, add to the operations of the campus, but it gives our faculty the competencies and research that they need to develop our students into those, prominent folks that get to go off and do big things. So all of those monies matter. They may not just translate dollar for dollar into an operating budget. So we are trying to learn more to leverage those dollars to bring more students in because the students are what drives those numbers that you saw before. And we already know that we can't cut our way out of this problem. We have been exercising or flexing our budgetary restraint muscles far too long. And as Neil said before, things are getting more expensive. What you don't see in there is that we're trying to keep up with the cost of inflation for everything that we buy, the utilities that we pay for. And every year we're taking a haircut. What does that do to our bottom line? It might be that the grass isn't mowed as often as it has been before. And then we're not attractive to that student who wants to come to New Paltz. I have to say, facilities, rock stars. They're doing a great job of the brick and mortar as much as they can to keep things running, but we do have some not so nice places inside our buildings that need to be fixed, and they need a different kind of money, a different flavor of money, the capital money. So we're looking at all opportunities to bring in the money. Recruitment and retention, we talked about this at length. It's not just the faculty, the students that we need to recruit and retain, it's the faculty and staff to keep this place going. If we don't offer competitive wages, we're not going to be able to recruit and retain. The cost of living here, as most of you know, if you're Kingston residents, cost of living is a little out of control in this area. So one of the things that we are going to be doing is doing a comprehensive compensation portfolio for our faculty and staff. And then, of course, we always look to achieve efficiencies, to look for opportunities for shared services with other community partners. We're engaging more with our community college campuses around the area. But with all of these things that we're doing, we have to keep our eye on the prize and provide a quality education for students. So I do thank you again. Best discussion I've seen at this table, and helpful for me as the financial leader of the campus to hear what you're all saying, what's coming from the community. Just a point on the spreadsheet that I did not bring with us because it's just more numbers. We are taking into account all of those revenue streams, one time and ongoing, that we've received in the budget. We're counting micro-credential because that goes toward our operating budget, but we're also counteracting that with the expenditures, the investments that we need to make in the faculty and staff to run these programs and in the equipment and other supplies that we'll need. So it is an ongoing process. You'll hear me talk about it throughout the year. It won't be a one and done. I think that I will be partners with the SUNY Budget Office until the end of time, until we've stabilized the budget. So it is a real focus. Your ideas, your help in the community are so welcomed and appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And so I have infinite confidence in you. I know it's just easy for you. Just take your, pen out and tap, tap, and everything's going to be wonderful. You're kidding. It's not easy, but it's worth it. So, any other new business? Good. So I want to thank everybody for coming here and participating and being engaged. It's really, really important. And I thank you. And is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Paul? See you soon. See you next week.
Thank you all.
Yes.
It's rest